Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our live webinar organized by ADEX Pixel Virtual Expo. And this week we celebrate our World Ocean Week, and I'm very glad to have Jack Henry Adams with us today. So, wherever which part of the world you are, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today we have Jack talking. He will be talking about environmental 360 VR, and he's a filmmaker. So I believe, Jack, you have used a lot of special technology or some special gadgets. I see in this picture, it has so many lens pointing everywhere. So without further ado, I'd like Jack himself to share his amazing creation. Over to you, Jack, please.
All right, thank you very much, Carter, for that introduction. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. So what I'll do, I'll just quickly share my screen with you here. You should be able to see that.
Yes. Clear, very good.
You see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So as Carter said, I'm a VR and 360 filmmaker, and today I'm just going to talk to you just about my journey in 360, as well as kind of the basics of 360 filmmaking, kind of how you can get into it as well with some equipment knowledge. And then we'll watch one video of a project that I worked on in Sipadan in beautiful Malaysia. And then we'll wrap up with some sort of conclusions for how 360 can be used for conservation and for sort of training and education in the future. So my 360 journey actually, funnily enough, started at ADEX in 2016. Went back in Singapore. At the time, I was living in Malaysia, and I was working for an underwater film company, Scuba Zoo. And I basically got into diving and filming. I studied environmental science. Then I went to the Caribbean for a couple of years, did my dive master, and started working at a research center in Bonaire. And it was when I started working there that I realized really the best way to kind of share scientific information and get people interested in it is through film. And I was lucky enough to get my hands on some underwater cameras there. And that was really where my love of film started. At that time, they were just normal, traditional 2D cameras. The 360 came a little while later. So when I went over to ADEX, it was the first time that I'd even put a headset on, and it was just incredible. It was a real kind of wake-up moment of how you can transport people to environments all over the world, and especially for me, like my favorite environment is coral reefs. So that was a real realization that maybe this is something that now with my film background, my diving background, I need to get involved with 360. And just here you can kind of see, these are some quite nice, almost old photos now of 360 cameras that I've used in the past and how I got into it. You can see Angkor Wat on the right there, with lots of traveling involved, which is great with this. The underwater system that I use on the left, and also we can attach it to the drone as well, so you can get nice aerial perspectives, not just underwater. So what is 360? This is basically a VR headset here. This is made by Oculus, and instead of kind of describing it to you, I thought it would probably be best if I just show you instead. So I can show you now. So this is a video taken from Komodo National Park. And as you can see, 360 basically means you can see up, you can see down, and we can see all around. And for underwater, that's fantastic. We can see up to the waves, and we can see underneath right down to the coral and all the fish everywhere where we go. And that really makes 360 for underwater one of the most perfect uses ever, because you have content everywhere. There's interest everywhere to look. You can look up, you can look down, you look behind. There might be a shark behind you, maybe, if you're into that. There might be like turtles everywhere. And with 360, you can capture all of this, and then you can watch it after, and you can watch it again and again and again, and you'll have a different experience each time, rather than just having a traditional video where you're always told where to look because of the frame. So I just wanted to talk a little bit now about the importance of 360 in conservation and how I use it and how others use it and are starting to use it in conservation, which is what we're talking about this week with World Oceans Week. Now, lots of people have started realizing that VR and 360 is an amazing empathy agent, which basically means that when people watch it, they really connect with the content. So always it's been the case that content is king, and the camera is the strongest weapon in conservation, and all of these things is all very visual. And it takes it to the next level with immersing people in the image rather than just showing them. It's now in full experience with VR 360, and it's proven to raise volunteer and also donor engagement as well. Just a small departure now from the underwater world, you can see here on the images on the right of the screen, we've got the VR booth for the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation, caring for orangutans, and there's a customer in there wearing the headset. This was a project that I worked on last summer, and as you can see in the bottom right, the orangutan, very curious, reaching straight for the camera. When you're wearing this headset, it really feels like the orangutan is reaching out for you, and you're right there. Which kind of leads to kind of the next point as well, which is memorable. I gave myself a tongue twister here. Memorable and measurable moments in education, and immersive media for focus in learning as well. It's a great tool for just enjoyment and kind of just a film and entertainment, but VR and 360 is also an incredibly powerful tool when it comes to education. When you think back about your time at school, really, you either remember really memorable teachers that inspired you, or you remember really memorable field trips, or you kind of focus in on lessons that kind of blew you away. For me, it's always the science experiments that I remember. And we work with schools and the Ministry of Education here in Singapore. And every time we go into any of the schools and we run a VR class, the kids absolutely love it. And we really have to hope that these are kind of creating memories that they're taking forward in the future, so that they hope to protect and inspire them to go out and experience diving and the underwater world themselves. The other good thing as well is that once they have the headset on, there's no more looking out the window. You're focused. If you look to your left, you see a turtle. If you look to your right, you see a school of jacks. If you look down, you see the coral that the teacher is telling you about. And if you look up, maybe you're lucky enough, you see a manta ray flying over you. With the content that we're creating underwater, it really is all around. So yeah, no more looking out the window for lazy students. And as well, or the conservation aspect, is access for everyone. So at times, and for lots of people, travel and diving is still very, very expensive, especially the places that we go and that you always see in these blue chip, high-level documentaries and all these incredible photos that people are taking all over the world. They're normally in places that are quite expensive to get to, and also the access isn't always easy either. Also, for this example with the orangutans, just the actual location, the animals itself are inaccessible because they're quarantined. So we have to go through health checks before we go anywhere near the animals, to make sure that we're not passing any pathogens across. And VR and 360 cuts across all of those boundaries. We can take people to the most remote island in Raja Ampat and help them dive there. We can then talk underwater whilst we're all experiencing the dive as well. And we can learn and we can inspire and show these places without having to actually go all of the time. I'm not saying at all that this is to replace going. This is to inspire people to go out and to want to protect these places so that they're there for future generations, which is kind of the whole point in using media as a conservation tool. So now we'll quickly go onto the VR and the 360 equipment. I'll just go over this very quickly because there's just so much of it now. And it's really amazing to think that just in the few years that I've been working in 360, which is just over 4 now, the only sort of rigs that we used to have, I'm going to use a laser pointer here, was this 360 Abyss, this was called, and this has GoPros inside it, a bit like the rig that you saw earlier as well. And now, just a few years on, we have just amazing tiny little 2-lens cameras with their own individual housings, which you can buy. They're like $600, very, very cheap. Moving all the way up into the professional VR cameras, which can be tens of thousands, and the image quality on those professional level cameras, like the Virtual 2 over here, is just incredible. And now one that I'm quite excited about as well, which is quite good for democratizing, being able to go out and make this content, make it cheaper for people, is we can now put these small cameras inside housings, and lots more people are going to be able to film now with these. Basically, the premise for a 360 camera is that you need more than one lens, and as you can see, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's more than, and it just goes on and on from there. Same as all camera systems. You can spend as much as you'd like. So quickly just run through just the very, very basics of underwater filming. And the main thing to consider when you're filming with 360 is that you are filming it for someone to explore the shots themselves. So with traditional filming, you're always looking constantly for the best angle. Do you want to be low to the coral? Do you want to be facing away from the sun? Do you want to be facing into the sun? Do you want silhouettes? Do you want close-ups? Do you want wide? All of these kind of shot ideas that you have in your head that run through constantly when you're filming. With the 360, you don't want to direct people's attention all of the time. You can kind of give them an idea where you would like them to look, but actually the whole idea is that they should explore for themselves. And that's kind of the magic quality of VR and 360. That's what makes experiences kind of personalized, and means that the viewer retention is very high. So the tip number 1, as I said before, most of the cameras, all of the cameras, have more than one lens. And as you can see from the little diagram on the right-hand side, this basically means that you have the amount of angle that the camera is covering, and that there is an overlap between these cameras. And it's this overlap which is very, very important in the stitching process of 360. This basically means that the algorithms know what is being in both images, and it stitches all those images together to give you the 360 sphere. So this overlap is very, very important. And as you can see here, where number 2 is, there's no overlap here where these cameras are. So if you were to film something in here, it won't get stitched properly, which means that you need to always make sure that you have a safe filming distance, which means preferably 1 to 2 meters is a safe filming distance, so that you know that at the end of the day, once you've done all your hard work, you go out, you've been diving the whole day, you get back and you stitch it, your shot's going to look really nice. Tip number 2 is no panning. So, you know, in the traditional shots, if you want to show something that's wider than the actual angle, you can do a pan from left to right or right to left. Now, in a 360 environment, our heads are the panning tools. We put the headsets on and we move our heads left to right, and then we can see everything. We can all go all the way around. So there's no need to pan. And if you pan the camera, you'll actually make the viewer quite sick. So that's another big tip. And panning is a big no-no. So just dive in a straight line, and you'll capture everything as you go along. Tip number 3 is about depth. And up until recently, and still at the moment, 360 cameras in general, apart from the very, very high-end ones, they don't have sensors in the same way that the traditional cameras do. So as soon as you go deep, all of underwater photographers know you start losing your light, you start losing your colors. So with the small sensors that come with 360 cameras, that's even compounded even more. You want to stay nice and shallow, so you've got nice light, nice colors, and you'll definitely see better results in your videos. And tip number 4 is kind of like a guessing game of what the fish or what the animal is going to do, and it's action blocking. So I'll just get the little laser point out again. So for example, this camera is facing this way. If you want to keep your subject here, then you won't be approaching a stitch line, which will mean that it's really nicely stitched, because the computer won't even need to try and guess. It just knows that I can film everything here. So if you want to swim along next to a turtle, for example, I keep using turtles as examples, you can just keep the turtle here and swim along with it so that it's always in the view of this camera. And then there won't be any stitching problems at all. So you'll end up with a really nice video. So now, after talking about the little cameras and about the a few tips underwater as well, I'm going to show you one of a video that I made about a year and a half ago now, out at Sipadan in an island on the east coast of Sabah, Malaysia. And for anyone that's been lucky enough to go out there, it's absolutely stunning. And I was lucky enough to go out there with my good friends Ollie Deppert and Alex Limboom. As you can see, it was very sunny. We all have shades on. This is the camera system I was using above land, and a lovely photo by Alex, thank you very much, of me with the camera system underwater. And of course, we had lots of production meetings during the filming. So I will now switch over again to a video, and I'm going to direct the video, kind of have us looking around, short little 5-minute video to kind of give you a snapshot of what Sipadan is all about. And it's following Alex. He's on assignment for Dive Photo Guide, and we stayed on Sea Ventures, which is an amazing rig converted into a hotel in Sipadan. So it's following Alex and his photography journey at Sipadan.
There are some places in this modern and connected world that still remain distant. In the vastness of the Celebes Sea, Sipadan stands alone, an underwater mountain rising 600 meters from the depths of the surrounding ocean. Corals have conquered this extinct volcano, hundreds of species coating its surface in a kaleidoscope of color. Sharks still reign supreme. Schools of jacks swim lazily in the current. And turtles cruise casually around the reef. My name is Alex Lindblom, and I'm an award-winning underwater photographer. And now I am back at world-famous Sipadan, one of my favorite locations. I'm on assignment for Dive Photo Guide to capture the reefs surrounding this isolated island. During my trip, I'll be staying here, a decommissioned oil rig turned dive resort, known as Sea Ventures, a fittingly iconic structure from which to dive the iconic Cipadan Island. Setting up and checking my camera has become my morning ritual. Underwater at Cipadan, you have to be ready for anything. Today, I have my Panasonic GH5 in Nauticam housing, rigged up with both strobes and video lights, allowing me to capture photos and film in a single dive. Cipadan has become one of the most protected marine reserves in the world. Dive resorts used to line its coast, but since 2004, the only way to get there is by boat. A short 30-minute trip from Sea Ventures. Only 120 divers are allowed onto the island each day to reduce diver pressure on the coral reefs. And on this beautiful morning, I am fortunate enough to be one of them. At Cipadan, you can take your pick of photographic subjects. They are everywhere. Sharks swim around you. Turtles, unperturbed by my presence, laze around the reef, even taking naps in plain sight, without a care in the world. Schools of giant bumphead parrotfish storm around the shallows in search of their next crunchy coral meal. And when thousands of jackfish surge past, you can't help but realize you're in a special place. Swimming underneath the jacks as they block out the sun, it's possible to get awe-inspiring silhouettes. Each dive at Cipadan is a surprise. As soon as I climb out, all I want to do is swap tanks and plunge back down beneath the waves. Wide angle or macro, there is something for everyone here, and it's because of the island's protection. Reserves like Cipadan are an example of how protection can and should be done, allowing us to come back time and again to enjoy its reefs. The life here is staggering and a must for all underwater photographers.
All right. So yeah, that was the virtual dive at Cipadan, Malaysia. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope the connection was okay. That was filmed over 3 days at Cipadan. It was a lot of fun to make. And yeah, just kind of a short film, more of a kind of piece to just kind of show how beautiful it is there. And hopefully inspire people to go and show that it is worth protecting. So for the next slide, I'm going to talk to you about the future of a VR 360 for ocean conservation, which is what we're talking about. And it's a really bright future, and it's something that's really exciting to be involved with now. Because the technology is just advancing so quickly all the time. And there's just a few points here, really. The software, firstly, is just getting better and better, and so are the headsets as well. For most of the time, I try and get out from behind the desk as much as physically possible. But when it comes to 360, the amount of software that we need to use and get to grips with, and all the editing, that's the real key to making 360 experiences work and to make them usable as well. So as you can see from the video that I just shown, that's just a video. It can now be seen on YouTube, Facebook. They have 360 playback. That's no problem at all. But how do you get 360 content into headsets? How do you get it in front of people? This is all the software that is key. And there's people coming out all the time with new solutions for group experiences, educational experiences, where you can measure the students' how they're doing, how they're paying attention, where they're looking, so you can direct them. And all the time, that's just getting better. As well as that, the cameras as well. Even just year by year, even month by month, the cameras are just getting better. And this just means that overall, the quality of the images and the more enjoyable they are to watch. When it first started out, it was quite difficult to watch 360, and it's just getting more stable, it's getting more vibrant, and it's getting better resolution all the time with the cameras. So just from like a visual perspective, that's absolutely fantastic news for VR, and being able to use it as a tool and as an engagement tool as well. There's also a much bigger community these days as well. It's still small, especially for sort of 360 underwater filmmakers and people that are involved there, but it's definitely getting bigger, and it's getting more traction with like large international organizations who are now investing, and they're investigating it, and they're starting to make their own content as well. So people like the BBC have started now with BBC VR. The UN as well has an entire VR department, and people like WWF are starting to see VR as a tool that they can use, and that's great, because that just means that the rest of the community, the NGO community, they can see that it's not just us saying, no, it really does work, like it's actually proven now. So people are much more open to giving it a go and seeing its effects, which are always positive. It would be remiss not to mention as well a little bit about the situation that we're in now, and this kind of new phrase, the new normal. And when it comes to VR and 360, of course, under the lockdown here in Singapore, we've had a lot of time to kind of think about this and think about the future of it. And we're all going to have to kind of adapt a little bit. And the restricted travel is going to mean that virtual experiences, like we're having right now, ADEX virtually, are going to become quite important in the way that we can convey information, and VR is perfectly set up to jump into that space and help out, make it much more interesting, make it much more engaging. So I think that looking forward, that's quite a bright thing for 360 and VR. Hopefully there are some problems that we can overcome with this technology. And just from like a hygiene perspective, it's always been ingrained in VR and 360. Of course, the headsets are wearable, so it's always been needed from the start that we be thinking about hygiene. So we've got headsets that are microbial of the face masks, and also with the they are safe for disinfecting as well. So now I just wanted to show you an example. I've been kind of talking about VR and 360 being more than just a kind of entertainment and visual thing. This is a company that I work with in Singapore called Hyverlab, and this is an amazing kind of training tool, I guess you would say, for schools, but also adult learning as well. It's for absolutely everyone. And it's called Eyes on Habitat, and this is something that they developed for teaching marine conservation and also research methods as well. So it kind of came really full circle for me getting involved with VR and 360, because I started out doing research methods traditionally, and you can sometimes see how these are difficult to do on land. You're doing dry runs on land without being able to get in the water. Now we can stay dry and we can be in the water and we can communicate. We don't need full face masks or anything like that. So it's a very powerful tool. So I'll just share this video with you now, so you can kind of see a little bit what it's all about. So this is a session that they run, multiple headsets. All 360-degree videos, and all of these headsets are all connected up. They're all viewing the same content at the same time. And this is very important so that we can direct people, so that we're actually learning rather than just viewing. So this is doing transects, teaching research methods. You can have 3D models, which are scanned in there as well.
Okay, at this point here, we have 2 organisms. Okay, so this is the first one.
And also quizzes inbuilt so that you can actually test the learning. Once the quizzes have been done, you can actually get real-time feedback to know how the students are learning as well. To make sure that the content is actually useful, and you can also improve it as well. Try and get to the next slide. So now just a kind of couple of conclusions before I open it out to if anyone's got any questions. I'm not too sure how to get to the questions yet, but I'll work that out in a second. Yeah, basically, since I've been involved with it, it's been a fantastic journey for me, learning this kind of new tool, this new media format that really didn't even exist, just like a few years ago in the public sphere. It's a fantastic tool for conservation. There's no doubt about that. It's great to inspire and also engage. It's proven to raise engagement, and it's a great training tool, and it's also perfect for education. We already work with lots of schools throughout Singapore, and I want to build that out to more internationally. I think that now with the new software that's coming out and the new headsets and all of this development is just making all of these scenarios much easier, and it means that the main focus can be on the inspiration. It can be on the education rather than fiddling around with the headset, which is sometimes an experience that people have had before with VR. And this is something that we are kind of having to work through, because the same with any kind of fledgling technology, there's always going to be growing pains, and we're really on the very edge of kind of technology with how it's developing. There's new cameras, new softwares, new headsets come out monthly pretty much. So it's a constant kind of mission to keep up to date and use the best equipment so that we can share our stories and really make the difference that we want to do with our films and with our experiences. There's also now much more investment across the media and the scientific community as well. Again, because of the technology, there's more use cases that are coming. We can now scan 3D from just having 2 cameras next to each other, which is just an amazing leap in technology. So you can create 3D models of reefs just by filming video over them. And from media, we're kind of seeing that there's more people viewing it, more people wanting to engage with it, and more platforms as well to view these kind of contents. And yeah, that's the last point as well, that it's just a better access to equipment as well. the fact that there's more equipment also is making lots of it much cheaper as well, which is great for people that want to start, want to get involved. And for anyone that does want to start and get involved, you can always email me afterwards. I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you have any questions now, I think we can go for that. I'm not too sure how to do it, or if there is any questions.
Yes, Jack, there is a question. There's a couple of questions actually. So basically, you know how underwater, how the water filter out red color as you go deeper. So now, how do you do the color correction then?
So with the 360 Abyss, which is one of the cameras that I mentioned before, you can actually get red filters to put over the camera system, which brings a lot of the red back. With most of the cameras, most of the 360 cameras, the white balance is locked in the camera. You can raise the temperature of it, but then once you're underwater, there's no so much access to the camera itself in some of the camera systems to actually change that white balance. On some of the higher end cameras, then you can change the white balance whilst you're on the dive. Of course, that kind of comes back to what I was saying before about pros and cons of each of the camera systems. If you have, 10, 15,000 upwards kind of amounts of money, then the camera systems are absolutely fantastic. You can do custom white balance all the way along. If you have a little bit less, the 360 Abyss, you can use that with red filters, which is very good already. And then from there, you'll have to try and get as much of the color back as you can in editing. And as one of the tips that I said, staying shallow is always going to be the best way to retain the colors, just staying as shallow as physically possible. You can even see in that video that I showed, there's a couple of shots of like the turtle that's like relaxing on the coral. You can see that already that's already just a bit deeper. That's only really 12, 15 meters, and the color is already washed out. Whereas the shot with Alex going across the coral, that was at about 3 meters, and you can see that the red color in the coral is much more prominent there. That's a good question. Okay, I can.
So there's one more. It says, I don't quite get the question, but what are the challenges in capturing this through their format underwater? So could you comprehend that?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like potentially they might have come in a little bit late or something. So like, the few tips that I mentioned at the start. And again, depending on, staying shallow, so you've got the color, swimming in a straight line so you don't make people dizzy in the headsets. And then also, it's really dependent on your camera system that you're interested in getting. So I wrote an article for Dive Photo Guide, which you can go and check out as well. It goes into a bit more detail of some tips. And depending on what camera system you have, there are lots of challenges. The 6 GoPro cameras, like they have really, really nice image quality for the fact that that camera system hasn't changed for a few years, but it's a real hassle on the day. You have 6 batteries, 6 SD cards, 6 O-rings, if you're using the one that I was using, or you have magnetic switching on of the cameras, which can sometimes go wrong. So there's quite a lot of challenges with that camera, and it's the same with any camera system, the same with the 2D. It's just getting to know your camera system. If you have one of the bubble types, then you have to set the camera up before you go on your dive, and then once it's in the water, you will just kind of record that whole dive. All the settings are locked, so you won't be able to change the settings, which in some ways is nice. You can also just enjoy your dive rather than fiddling around with settings the whole time. But if you're looking for specific shots, then you need to make sure you set up your camera for that specific shot before you go on that dive. Yeah.
Is it possible to dive with 360 setup more than, say, 50 meters where the water is darker, is there a way to set up with like 360 strobes or not strobes, but video lights?
Yeah, with video lights. Yeah, so yeah, definitely it's possible. There's kind of two options for, well, three options for lighting, especially when you're a bit deeper. So one option is, which is actually a really cool option, and if anyone's interested, they should check out the BBC video, which was shot in, I think, Canada, about an octopus. And in that video, they use the lights on screen. The diver themselves actually has the dive lights, and I think I'm not sure if Casey's here or not, but I'm pretty sure that they strapped multiple dive lights together to make sure that it was super bright. And then the diver on screen has this light and is directing it around, which is a really nice way of using light to direct, and then also to use the light to have more color as well. So that's one option. The second is that you can actually mount the lights onto the 360 housing itself. Some housings have attachments specifically for this. Others you kind of have to make yourself. The most important thing is that the light then doesn't get in the shot. So you need to mount them in between the cameras so that they can't be seen. And then the third one is to actually place lights around the scene, which is another really cool way of doing it. I've seen a video about shipwrecks, which they've done really nicely, placing the video lights before swimming through the wreck. Another great use for VR 360, because of course the wreck surrounds you, so you can look everywhere. And this kind of creates a really nice like ambience within the wreck. It lit up different corners, and again, you could direct where people are looking.
Nice. Yeah, I guess if the light is not properly used, it will have some flaring at the edge of the lens, isn't it? So it really have to place it properly.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to place it in between the lenses, and then make sure that you're doing your tests before you're getting any shots that you need to you really need to nail. So kind of a bit of trial and error, but just being aware of where each camera, the angle of the view of each camera, and just remembering as well that with the refraction in the water, we need to have domes on front of each camera to make sure that it's covering the correct amount of angle.
Right. I think we can take one last question before we end this webinar. This is a question from Ellison. Basically, who are your clients? Are educators using your film in classroom for underwater education subjects? Yeah,
that's a good question. So my clients are really varied. I mean, it's great as part of the kind of the different projects that I've been involved with, underwater, like on land, but also different industries as well. So I work with lots of NGOs. So worked with WWF in the Philippines, and working with Planet Water as well, who's an NGO based in America. They are doing more of a volunteer engagement for fresh water, and they kind of build water towers throughout the world to ensure clean drinking water. The WWF one was about whale sharks, and with the projects, I'm trying to think, with the projects that are shown in the classrooms. We kind of reuse and we can repackage footage that we've shot for specific projects, like some of the footage from the Discovery Channel project that we filmed, which was in Cambodia. we kind of packaged that up for more of like a travel and a tourism educational package for the for the education ministry here in Singapore. So if there's kind of specific topics that they want to cover, then we've got shots of corals, we've got shots of mountains, we have aerials from the drone of different environments, but also lots of heritage projects as well. So not only can we kind of film the world as we see it now, but we can also use footage from the past and put that in the VR projects to kind of link between now and the past as well, which is really good for kind of like heritage projects where you're trying to bring a connection to the past. One project that I'm working on now, completely different, is about the World War II, about the actual fall of Singapore, and that's for the Australian veterans who are basically taking that around schools as well in Australia. Mainly, it's about the Australian effort in World War II, and kind of the horrible situation that happened in the fall of Singapore. And that's a completely different topic, away from the oceans. So really, from my perspective, I get involved with lots of projects, and the common theme is always connecting people with that environment, that space, and that kind of important message that needs to be shared.
Nice. Thanks for this insightful VR 360 filmmaking topic that you have just shared with the audience. I think we have come to the end of this live webinar. If you have more questions, please continue to post it on the Facebook chat. I believe Jack will be able to answer them when he is available. Right, Jack?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
I just saw one from here, like, can you post the link to the octopus video? Yeah, I'll post it up there. And as you can just see on the screen now, all of the projects that I've been mentioning, they're all available to watch on my website, jackhenryadams.com. And you can also get in contact through there as well. If you have any further questions, I'm always happy to answer anything. It's kind of a learning process, this whole format, for everyone. So it's great to kind of meet people that are in it, people that want to get into it, and people that want to know more. So please get in touch.
Nice. Thank you, Jack Henry Adams, for your time and your insightful sharing. I'd like to keep in touch, and hopefully we'll see you soon at ADEX after the pandemic ends. So yes, in the meantime, take care and stay safe.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, Andrew, bye.
Bye.